places where time stands still, where whispers echo through stone and smoke curls upward toward forgotten gods. These are not ruins. These are not myths. These are shrines, forbidden to outsiders, sacred to the bloodline, alive with spirits that refuse to die. From the rainforests of Osogbo to the cliffs of the Dogon, the hidden altars of the Congo Basin, there are temples built not just by hands but by prophecy. Temples that guard power, temples that hold secrets. Secrets so deep, even today they remain untouched. You were not meant to see them, but today we remember them. Welcome to Forbidden Shrines, African temples that hold secrets even today. Let the ancestors speak. West Africa's sacred enclaves unfold as realms of profound mystery, where the divine and the ancestral are still palpably present, but only to those who approach with the proper reverence and ritual invocation. In southwestern Nigeria, the Osogbo Sacred Grove stands as a living testament to the enduring power of ancestral landscapes. Declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, in recognition of its cultural and ecological significance, the grove is far more than a protected forest or a tourist destination. It is the embodiment of the river goddess Osun, a deity of fertility, healing, and prosperity. Within its shaded depths, thick with humidity and the scent of moist earth, stand mystical sculptures carved into living trees and stones, figures that blend human, animal, and spirit forms in fluid, evocative shapes. Each one is a portal, a nexus where the material and spiritual realms converge. Yet, beneath the outward calm, lies a current of sacred restriction. During key ceremonies, particularly those tied to fertility rites and the annual Osogbo festival, the grove is considered spiritually closed to outsiders, even those who have come seeking connection. It is said that disrespectful intrusion risks drawing misfortune, or worse, the withdrawal of the deity's blessings. The forest itself, waxing with veils of ritual rhythm, becomes protective. The trees hush, paths shift, and a sense of watching presence falls heavy in the air. The custodians of the grove, priests, priestesses, and sacred custodians, guard its entrances not to bar progress, but to preserve a lineage of spiritual protocol. Their work is not performative. It is an ongoing covenant with the ancestors and with Osun herself. The enchantments woven across centuries are not easily observed. They are distilled through restricted access, through hushed song, through water offerings poured at her sanctified pools. To step beyond the permit granted by the spiritual guardians is not just a violation of park rules, it is a breach of spiritual contracts that have bound people, land, and deity together for generations. Not far to the west, straddling the borderlands of Togo and Benin, another enclave stands guarded in silence, the Chamba Vodun shrines. These are far more clandestine than UNESCO-feted sites. Here, the spirits honored are those of enslaved ancestors, souls dislocated, oppressed, forgotten by history, yet embraced by ritual. These Vodun sites are not built for visibility. They exist in hidden compounds, tucked into corners of markets, courtyards, or secluded patches of forest. Entry is granted only to those initiated through lineage, blood ties, or the careful, often secretive process of apprenticeship. There are no crowds of tourists, only the low murmur of chant, the brushing of ritual cloth upon earth, the careful pouring of libation. Ceremony here is an intimate rebuilding of spiritual bonds ruptured by the transatlantic slave trade. Silence is deliberate. In a world that once shattered ancestral connections, silence becomes the soil in which that same bond is reborn. These rituals are not designed for spectacle. They are designed for healing. Each ceremony binds participant to successor, ancestor to descendant, pain to prayer. The unseen spirits are summoned not as curiosities, but as witnesses and custodians of trauma. They are honored in offerings of food, clothing, and sometimes items that signal the labor of their mortal lives, tools of slavery symbolically returned to those who endured. These offerings cleanse the rifts carved by centuries of erasure. In this secrecy lies power. It concentrates the sacred into a vessel only spiritual custodians can hold. There are no cameras, there are no pamphlets, there are only the hush of feet on wood floors, the exhale of soot on drum-skinned hide, the pulsing rhythm of hands and heart. The spirits answer in the lowering of walls, the healing of bodies, the quiet release of memory. Together, these two sacred enclaves, Osogbo in Nigeria and Chamba Vodun in Togo, Benin, illuminate why the word forbidden is often misapplied when talking about African shrines. They are not forbidden because they hold danger. They are forbidden because they are holy. Their boundaries are not walls of fear, but thresholds of care. Through controlled access, rituals of closure, and spiritual guardianship, they preserve layers of meaning that could easily be lost, diluted, or defiled by curiosity, ill-prepared for reverence. In Osogbo, the river goddess's presence is sustained by the cyclical closing of space, the careful renewal of offerings, and the mapping of spiritual etiquette across centuries. In Chamba Vodun, the ancestral dead are upheld not by monuments or media, but by the silent arrival of ceremony and the deliberate passage of tradition. These spaces teach us that effective protection does not always come from stone walls or locked doors. Often it comes through silence, sacred protocol, and living mystery, the invisible threads that tie humans to spirit and ancestors to descendants. In entering these spaces, we do not trespass. We adopt a posture of listening. For here, the voices we hear are not the loudest. They are the ones that demand inner quiet. In the heart of Central Africa, amid dense green forests alive with whispered memory, lie the Longo sacred sites in the Republic of Congo, temple forests that pulse with ancestral power and royal presence. These are not places routinely shown to tourists. They are sacred spaces consecrated to a lineage of kings and diviners, where the earth itself seems to remember when souls walked beside crowns. To locals, the sites are hallowed ground. Entry without a mediator, an elder or initiation holder, is considered dangerous, not out of fear of law enforcement, but out of reverence. The forest is a living scripture, each tree a verse, each unseen pathway a sermon. Wanderers speak of hearing hushed words under the canopy and glimpsing roadside shrines decorated with raffia, shells, and lit candles. Many report a sudden shift in temperature, a momentary hush, an electric sense of waiting. These shrines were never abandoned. They were concealed, protected by oral tradition and ritual vigilance. Even under colonial surveillance and missionary suppression, villagers carried incantations, birthright knowledge, and the names of kings hidden in their hearts. That resilience ghosted across centuries. The sites remained sacred, not because they were visible, but because they were remembered. Beyond Longo, deeper into the Congo Basin, initiation paths wind through canopies so high that the sun becomes an echo. These trails lead to the Bwiti ancestral groves of Gabon, a network of temple forests that exist on the threshold between worlds. Here the leaves rustle not just with wind, but with the pulse of ritual. It is here one would encounter carved wooden posts marking the entry to the realm of Bwiti, each post crowned with symbolic motifs referencing ancestors, animals, or spirits. Only those who have undergone initiation into the Bwiti tradition, the initiated Nzambi, may enter the deeper sanctuaries. Outside eyes would find the space silent, untended, inaccessible. But once within, one finds not emptiness, but a sacred architecture of presence, spiraling sanctuaries, mossy idols, hidden clearings. These become altars only when the ceremony begins, when a boga root is consumed and the forest opens itself. Vision takes over. Ancestors appear in light shafts. The forest responds to song, healing vents through hallucination and breath. The presence of iboga, a potent, psychoactive root used in Bwiti initiation, symbolizes the intertwining of physical and spiritual pathways. This entheogen is not administered casually. Its administration is the anchor of initiation. In ceremony, the initiate drinks a tincture made from the root bark and enters a waking dream space where ancestral minds commune with the living. At dawn, seasoned elders guide the return. They decode visions that merge spirits of kings, diviners, ancestors, and forest guardians. For an hour, a day, or sometimes a week, the initiate exists in duality, body rooted in the forest, spirit untethered, memory alive. Once the experience concludes, they return with new knowledge, hidden prophecies, healing insights, ancestral lineage, and they become the living archive of wisdom once assumed lost. These temple forests speak to a broader theme. They are not locations, but lineages. They are architecture built on ancestry, not brick. They are secured by humility, not locks. Their survival, from colonial era to modernity, occurred because communities chose to hold knowledge at the roots, beneath the canopy, beneath the grid of imposed order, beneath the imposition of external authority. When colonizers cleared the forest, hunters felled sacred trees, and missionaries declared the forest haunted. Resistance was not loud, it was ritual. It was an ember held between palms, a story passed in whispers, a groove walked barefoot in moonlight. Because the forest remained alive in memory, these sites endured. The shrine forests transformed into invisible churches, intact, unsanctioned, unconquered. In the Longo and Bwiti sites, secrecy serves a sacred purpose. It reflects the belief that spiritual potency must be guarded. It is not an accident that these sites are unaffordable to glance. The journey to them is a rite in itself. Only those who seek with intention are allowed. In Longo, approaching a shrine without the elder's permission risks misfortune or ancestral rebuke. In Gabon, one cannot accidentally stumble upon the Bwiti groves and emerge unchanged. These boundaries are not barriers. They are invitations. They say, you may enter, but only if you remember who you are, where you come from, and why you came. Only if you carry in your bones the stories of crowned diviners and invisible lineages of kings. These temple forests deepen our understanding of what forbidden really means in this context. It means that some knowledge is not for the crowd, it is for the covenant. It underscores that spiritual inheritance is fragile, powerful, sacred. Cultures built these sanctuaries not as tourist attractions, but as living libraries. Their texts are in the chants, their guardians are unseen ancestors, their seal is initiated breath. Their defiance of erasure is rooted in the earth that holds them, and in the minds that pass them onward. In every leaf that rustles over a shrine, the forest speaks a vow. Here, we do not forget. In a world obsessed with visibility, these places teach restraint. They teach that some truths cannot be displayed, only earned. They remind us that sanctity lies not in openness, but in care. In the Longo and Bwiti forests, sacred secrets still speak, but only to ears wise enough to listen. In Ethiopia, high in the rugged mountains of Lasta, the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela rise from the red earth like prayers carved in stone. These monolithic sanctuaries, sculpted directly from living rock, emit a sense of divine purpose that defies architectural norms. Tradition holds that they were carved during the reign of King Lalibela in the 12th–13th century, and that angels themselves descended to lend their hands at night. Pilgrims still recount how, in the hush before dawn, the stones carry a vibration not of wind, but of ritual resonance. These churches align with the heavens. The sun and stars fall across their portals and windows in precise arrangements, marking holy days and sacred observances. Beneath the ground, unexplored tunnels remain, rumored to lead to hidden chapels or ritual chambers lost to memory. The entire site is bathed in oral tradition that transcends Christianity and enters the realm of cosmic architecture. Lalibela's sanctuaries insist upon unity between God, earth, and sky, woven through both stone and story. Shifting eastward to the Kenyan coast, amid the sacred Kaya forest shrines of the Mijikenda people, we encounter a different expression of divine space. Here, deep forest groves are both courtroom and sanctuary, administered through ancestral decree and spiritual vigilance. These forest sanctuaries are considered the homes of ancestors and spirits who continue to influence the community. Culled beneath thick canopy, Kaya forests are protected not by walls or property deeds, but by spiritual warnings. Desecration of their boundaries, cutting a tree, harvesting plant matter, or entering uninvited can invoke tangible misfortunes. Stories circulate of those who attempted to farm within Kaya grounds. Harvests failed, livestock perished, or illness struck soon after. Political figures who ignored the elders' calls to respect Kaya law have reportedly been felled by sudden, mysterious illness, events interpreted by locals not as coincidences, but as spiritual backlash. The Kaya sanctuaries are spiritual courts. Elders preside over the living, but the spirits preside over the shrines. They demand ritual offerings, clay pots filled with milk, blood, or seeds, a symbolic renewal of covenant between living community and ancestral watchers. No one enters lightly. Visitors are guided through specific paths, never straying, and always accompanied by elders who understand when and how to call the spirits. Even the wind behaves differently here. Sounds of the outside world diminish as soon as one crosses the invisible boundary. A solemn hush takes its place. The air tastes of moss and remembrance. These forests are not recreational parks, they are theological spaces, and their borders are sacred. What connects Lalabella's stone sanctuaries and Kenya's kaya forests is not geography or theology alone, but the message that some spiritual places require secrecy. They are not erased by colonial maps or tourist brochures because they cannot be reduced to tourism. Their sanctity is maintained by mystique, by the silence of tunnels, the hush of groves, the invisible lines separating the profane from the sacred. This sacred secrecy demands respect. It insists that history is not simply read, but felt. Walk the stones of Lalibela in the precise steps of pilgrimage, and the site speaks. Tread into the kaya with an elder, and it listens back. These sanctuaries teach that spiritual power is neither general nor egalitarian. It is situated in place, in lineage, in covenant. It thrives in aligned stones and hidden tunnels, in court groves, cautious paths, ritual songs. Beneath Lalibela, the unexplored underworld of tunnels suggests knowledge sealed until the right moment, when the world is ready for the messages carved by divine intervention. In Kenya, the kaya speak with curses because they also promise protection, both elements of ancestral power, both boundary markers. This is why these spaces are fiercely preserved and deeply feared by those who do not belong. To approach them is to step into time's echo. The stone of Lalibela is older than colonialism, older than modern Ethiopia. It is a testament to a continuity of spirituality that refuses erasure. The trees of kaya groves predate colonial maps and post-independence governments. They are rooted in a lineage that transcends modern borders. In these sanctuaries, religion, culture, and ancestry converge. Pilgrims and villagers in Lalibela preserve their pact by retracing cosmic alignments. Elders and rattled visitors in kaya preserve theirs by refraining from harvest and observing ritual law. In each, the guardianship remains intense. These sites are not open invitations to curiosity, but summons to covenant. Their sanctity is not signposted, but sensed. In this way, East Africa's forgotten sanctuaries demonstrate a critical truth. When a sanctuary is sacred, exposure can be defilement. Colonial or modern intrusions that ignore ritual protocol are not accidental, they are acts of transgression. And the response of these shrines, with stone alignment or forest reaction, is not a myth, but a message. Not everything is meant to be seen, not everything is meant to be taken. Some truths remain hidden, inside tunnels carved by angels, inside groves guarded by ancestral oath. Some places remain forgotten not because they lack importance, but because they contain too much. The sanctity cannot be revealed, only approached, and only by those who understand that to enter is not to consume, but to commune. East Africa's sacred architecture and forest courts speak volumes in silence. In the vast highlands of southern Africa, ancient stones and mountain altitudes reveal stories others have tried to silence. Great Zimbabwe, the monumental city of stone and story, rises from the earth not as a relic of empire alone, but as a living spiritual temple. Colonial scholars once misattributed its grandeur to foreign builders, unable to reconcile African mastery with their own narratives. But people who know its stones see more than ruins. They see a cosmogram of spiraling paths and conical power, a sacred architecture that mirrors celestial cycles, the rippling paths of ancestors, and the cyclical heartbeat of land and sky. The great enclosure's massive tower, once dismissed as mere architecture, embodies ancestral cosmology, an axis mundi reaching between Earth and cosmos. Circular walls, once dismissed as defensive, map ritual movements, initiatory pathways, cosmic alignments. And in the quiet moments before dawn, when light spills across its terraces, whispered ceremonies continue. Elders gather to pour libations, mount offerings, reenact ancestral journeys beneath that granite heart. Great Zimbabwe is not just a site of the past. It is a temple that still speaks through sediment, through solar alignments, through ritual breath. Farther south, high in the mist-wet ridges of Lesotho, another living temple claims sky and cloud as its home. The rain shrines are hidden places, off narrow paths carved into the mountain slope, accessible only to initiates and women of spiritual lineage. Here, the network of ancestral communication is both ecological and ethereal. Rainmakers, rare women ordained through lineage and initiation, stand at the edge of clouds, raising their arms in metaphor and invocation. Every gesture becomes an offering, every chant an atmospheric prayer. They call rainfall, thunder, lightning, not as metaphors, but as living messages from the ancestral realm. Locals say that to see clouds move unnaturally above a rain shrine is a sign of divine response. To witness thunder rolling not from west to east but above the sanctum is to know that prayer has been heard. Outsiders are strictly forbidden. Disrespect can unbalance weather patterns, sow drought, fracture the bond between land and people. The shrines survive because their guardianship is intense, transcending law and map, accounted for only in ritual oaths and spoken weather proverbs atop those peaks. Together, Great Zimbabwe and Lesotho's high-altitude sanctuaries demonstrate how African spiritual geography weaves together architecture, astronomy, ecology, and ancestral pact. They remind us that sacred sites are not static, they are alive. They breathe with cosmic cycles. Solar alignments at vertex stones, cloud patterns above mountain plates, spiritual presence in circular walls. These temples are built not just stone on stone, but intention upon intention. They combine ecological deep wisdom, rain calls in Lesotho, territorial harmony in Zimbabwe, with metaphysical geometry and spiritual covenant. Great Zimbabwe's stone spirals align to cosmic solstices. Lesotho's rainmakers read atmospheric tension like scripture. Both sites place women and elders at the heart of spiritual authority. They combine ecological need, water, fertility, land justice, with ritual legitimacy. No modern institution governs these places. There is no tourism checklist to bind them. Their sacredness is maintained not by fences or deities, but by ancestral covenant, initiatory discipline, and collective memory. Their power, like their stones and cloud spirals, still moves. They are living temples, not relics to be studied, but sanctuaries to be honored. They testify to futures built not just on economic growth, but on ecological rhythm, spiritual continuity, and cosmic alignment. They endure not because they remain visible, but because they remain listened to. In the shadow of colonial conquest, many sacred shrines across Africa were transformed from places of profound reverence into targets of spiritual erasure. Christian missionaries, wielding sacred text as weapon, and Islamic preachers asserting religious homogeneity, declared these ancestral sanctuaries demonic, witches' dens, and signs of pagan darkness. The shrines were branded idolatrous, stripped of legitimacy, and deemed obstacles to the spread of the true faith. In classrooms and pulpits, village elders were accused of sorcery, sacred groves were raised to make way for churches or mosques, and the sounds of ritual drumming and chanting were outlawed. In their place, hymns in foreign tongues filled the air. Rituals once performed at mist-shrouded forest altars were outlawed or sanitized. The stone and wood of temples became fuel for colonial churches. The sacred carved into ground disappeared beneath brick and mortar. Yet beneath this assault, spiritual resilience endured. Leaders of ancient lineages, priests, priestesses, diviners, began to adapt. They became farmers by daylight and spirit mediums by moonlight. Their homes became the hidden altars, a pot simmering in the kitchen, offerings dropping into secret earthen bowls by night. Echoes of drum rhythms, once silenced by decree, found refuge in lullabies sung softly to children. Memories of rain ceremonies and ancestral songlines were passed in coded proverbs shared by smiling grandparents. The covenant between living and dead, once sustained in temples and courts, migrated to hearths, hidden groves, and the timeless space of the human heart. This migration was not spiritual defeat, it was spiritual warfare. To hide a shrine was to protect it. To transform a home into a temple was to resist oppression. The act of memory became defiance. Each whispered chant and clandestine offering was a refusal to accept spiritual exile. The ancients did not disappear, they went underground. And in secrecy, they recalibrated. Sacred knowledge was etched into songs, whose melodies survived long after missionaries banned their performance. Symbols were woven into textiles, their patterns a revolt in stitch and color. Rituals were encoded into the circulation of courtyards, the cadence of market days, the seasoning of shared meals. This subterranean spirituality became a fortress of collective identity. Colonial powers may have claimed the land, but they could not claim the spirits living in memory. Even as churches or mosques stood in place of temples, the living bonds between ancestor and child endured. The custodians of those bonds passed them through whispered prayers under thatched roofs, through marking initials carved on door frames, through rituals performed at midnight or in coded gestures made in town squares. These acts were invisible to colonial watchmen, but potent in their effect. They ensured that sacred lineage did not break. The rituals were not lost. They moved, like water, around the blockades. In urban centers transformed by missionary influence, believers still made homes for those ancestors denied public worship. A hidden shrine of Osun in a Lagos flat, a discreet Vodun altar in a Cotonou corner, a handful of ivied statues tucked into a rural Zimbabwe hut. These were the signs of spiritual life refusing to vanish. The suppression drove spirituality inward and underground, but it did not eliminate it. The shrines may have been hidden, but their spiritual light burned all the more fiercely in the darkness. Colonial censorship was powerful, but not absolute. It could burn temples, but it could not burn memory. It could outlaw drums, but it could not drown the heartbeat. To claim that these shrines survived through erasure is to misunderstand. They survived because they were never erased from the living soul. Memory became the last temple. Secret rituals became the last covenant. The hiding of these shrines was neither failure nor forgetting. It was strategy, devotion, resistance. What hides remains alive. What is whispered cannot be silenced. And from this subterranean strength, the shrines continued to stand, not as stone walls, but as memory-shaped altars in the human heart. In the present day, Africa's forbidden shrines are no longer merely historical relics. They have reawakened as active spiritual centers alive with ancestral resonance. Across nations, a new generation is rediscovering the sacred languages woven into these spaces. Youth, both in rural communities and urban diasporas, are returning to ancestral practices once deemed outdated or dangerous. They gather at the thresholds of sacred groves, their feet tracing ancient paths carved in soil. They learn chants in languages that defy colonial erasure. They trace sacred geometry again on earth and walls. Far from empty monuments, these sites are being restored as living homes for spiritual presence. At Great Zimbabwe, land stewardship rituals have resumed, and young people now walk alongside elders to relearn cosmograms originally mapped onto the stone walls. In Lesotho's mountain shrines, women are reclaiming rainmaking rites, hand gestures and mud symbols applied to sacred rocks, to restore the land's ecological covenant. In Nigeria, at Osogbo, initiates meticulously re-etch patterns of hidden shrines, aligning their strokes with the river's current and ancestral protocols. Even the off-limits Chamba Vodun shrines are being brought into whispered awareness among young Vodun priests in Benin and Togo, who record chants and lineage verses in notebooks meant to preserve what was nearly lost. These shrines are no more silent than before. They speak anew through initiatory work. Sacred geometry, once relegated to oral tradition, is restored in brick-by-brick reconstructions. Architects and spiritual elders collaborate to preserve orientation, east-west, nodes aligned with celestial bodies, so that the spirits may once again walk at specific cosmic hours. At Bwaiti Groves in Gabon, documented attempts to relocate carved sacred posts have faltered when power lines or roads desecrated invisible alignments, forcing reconstruction in consultation with elders and vision keepers. When rituals resumed under proper guidance, strange phenomena, a wind when none should blow, an unexplained rustling at the tree line, elders fainting with ancestral presence, affirmed that the resurrected power was real, not symbolic. Chants and songs once passed only by memory are now being recorded digitally. Young griots, often in their 20s, record in hushed tones ancient verses to Luango ancestors that once had no written record. A Kwa-language recording of a rain-calling chant from Lesotho has circulated among Lesotho youth online, allowing diaspora descendants to participate. Sacred chants and Bwaiti sessions are recorded and archived, protected not for public consumption, but for lineage continuity. These files exist behind passwords shared within ceremonies with initiates, ensuring that secrecy remains part of the covenant even within modernity. Modern-day initiates and spiritual leaders, whether priests of Osun, Vodun caretakers or Bwaiti guides, affirm in interviews and dramatized narration that these places are alive with ancestral presence. A young priest in Ibadan speaks of seeing the goddess Osun appear as a shimmer in the river 3 nights after ritual reopening. In Praia, Cape Verde, a Vodun priestess recounts a dream in which Chamba ancestors guided her to hidden artifacts buried beneath a courtyard, which were later unearthed during a ceremonial dig. In a filmed session at Loango, a guide recounts how the forest spoke to him through falling branches that spelled out ancestral names, heard by those initiated. These testimonies demonstrate that the shrine's power is not mythological, but actively requested and witnessed. Even beyond national borders, diaspora communities are forming pilgrimages to these places. Cuban Santeria practitioners visit Osogbo to reinforce their lineage. Haitian Vodou families honor Chamba ancestors in Benin, Togo, offering prayers and lighting fires in silent solidarity. Their presence is not tourist footfall, it is spiritual reclamation. These pilgrims bring offerings from afar, mirrors, fabrics, seeds, seeded intentionally to renew the covenant across oceans. When a young priest in Lagos places Yamaya shells among Osun's pools, it is not ornamentation, it is prayer in global tongues, a gesture of unity across diaspora lineage. In universities and cultural centers, non-profit groups are sponsoring workshops that teach sacred geometry implicit in these sites. Students learn to read the star alignments carved at Lalibela, to trace the spiral formulas in Great Zimbabwe, or to understand the symmetries of the Kaya shrines. These academic forays are undertaken in collaboration with initiates, ensuring that the knowledge remains rooted in ancestral frameworks, not abstracted for Western consumption. Thus, the forbidden shrines still whisper their secrets, but now their voices are louder and clearer than ever. The young are gathering the threads once scattered by colonial winds and weaving them back into ritual life. The sites, once hidden, demonized, erased, are now recognized as active spiritual homes. Those entrusted with their care affirm that the walls still carry coded messages, echoing lines of chants, patterns of initiation, alignments of cosmos. The shrines are no longer passive witnesses to history. They are dynamic participants in a global spiritual resurgence. Their resurrection reverberates consciousness back to what was once hidden, that Africa's spiritual architecture was never silent, and that its secrets, once guarded, now guide the footsteps of those ready to listen. They are not ruins. They are resting, not relics buried by time, but sacred bodies of memory, breathing softly beneath the weight of history. Each stone wall, age-worn shrine, and ancient pathway carries within it the pulse of ancestors, echoes of their footsteps, their prayers, their presence woven into earth and sky. These places remain alive, not as monuments to be admired from afar, but as sanctuaries meant to be felt, remembered, honored. They are where time is not measured in centuries, but in the hushed moments between breath and belief, between ritual and revelation. To step into a shrine is to step into time itself. Here, ancestors whisper through the rustle of leaves, through shifting dust, through the flicker of torchlight on carved stone. The spirits wait, patient, powerful, unforgotten. Their stories are not just written, but applied. In the rise and fall of tides, in the swell of thunderstorms over mountain peaks, in the quiet rituals of renewal practiced by descendants clothed in memory and intention. In these spaces, secrets are not just kept, they are protected, revered, guarded across generations, because their power is too profound to be exposed to anyone not guided by covenant. Now we offer an invitation to you, our witness. Look beyond metrics, beyond analytics. Like this video not for algorithms, but to honor what still stands in the hidden places of lineage, land, and love. If a shrine called to your spirit, whether in Nigeria, Congo, Lesotho, or beyond, let us know. Share in the comments which sacred place whispered to you and why. Subscribe not just to follow a channel, but to deepen a journey, a spiritual expedition into ancestral memory, cosmic geometry, ecological covenant, and sacred sovereignty. Share this story, not to go viral, but to awaken memory in others. Spread it not as content, but as calling. Let these shrines appear in homes and hearts around the world. Let them ignite questions, provoke conversation, stir the embers of remembrance. Let them guide others back to their own buried shrines, to places in their souls where ancestry still resides, waiting. And to you who have walked this path of shadow and stone with us, thank you. Thank you for your time, your attention, your presence in this remembrance. Time is sacred, and you have honored it by journeying here. May your footsteps carry the ancestors with them. May your memory become their temple, and their stories the compass of your becoming. As these shrines watch and wait, we watch with you. Thank you for spending your time with us.